All right, so today we're going to do things a little different than we usually do. Last week I went full on nerd heretic, threw out some stuff that could have gotten me fired, but I'm still here, still standing. So that's good. Yeah, two of you are clapping. That's terrific. All right. Today we're going after a very different tone. This is going to be highly experiential. It's going to be sort of group Lectio Divina-ish with some key questions along the way. A lot of times in the church calendar year, people show up for Palm Sunday because this kicks off Holy Week. And then their lives are busy and they can't make a Monday, Thursday, or Good Friday service. So then they show up on Easter Sunday. And so they go from one high on Palm Sunday, Jesus is coming into the city, woohoo! And then they show up the next Sunday, Jesus is risen from the dead. Not to give you a spoiler or anything, but that's what happens next week. And so people are celebrating all over again, right? And we really miss the middle. And the middle matters because in this week of Jesus' life, we get life in a week. The week of the last week of Jesus' life is all of life, all of the human experience in 1 week. And so we just want to take some time with that and roll through it slowly. So I've got a question of the day coming up for you, but first, the way we're going to get there is two of the good news things that happened on Palm Sunday and a little bit after that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll with you through the Gospel of Mark on these passages. I'm pretty sure I used the Message translation here. And it's not very often that we take time just to hear the story. A lot of people have never done this. You've never heard it just in one setting. So I want you to just experience it in one setting. So it's like Story Hour with Pastor Pete. And we'll have some songs along the way. We're going to have meditation that Jenny will lead, when that time comes. But first, this is the Palm Sunday text. When they were nearing Jerusalem, this is Jesus and the disciples, at Bethphage and Bethany on Mount Olives, he sent off two of the disciples with instructions. Go to the village across from you. As soon as you enter, you'll find a colt tethered, one that has never yet been ridden. Untie it and bring it. If anyone asks, what are you doing? Say, the master needs him and will return him right away. They went and found a colt tied to a door at the street corner and untied it. Some of those standing there said, what are you doing untying that coat? The disciples replied exactly as Jesus had instructed them, and the people let them alone. They brought the colt to Jesus, spread their cloaks on it, and he mounted. Then people gave him a wonderful welcome, some throwing their coats on the street, others spreading out rushes they had cut in the fields. Running ahead and following after, they were calling out, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of God. Blessed the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in highest heaven. He entered Jerusalem, then entered the temple. He looked around, taking it all in. But by now it was late. So he went back to Bethany with the 12. So just a couple nerd notes on this, especially if you're newer to the story. Jesus is choosing his ride. I do this every year, just to remind you that he is choosing what vehicle he is going to enter into Jerusalem. And he has options. A lot of what you're seeing here has some hearkening back to some Old Testament stuff that happened with King David. Some of it has to do with some messianic hope about what kind of Messiah this Jesus might be. But what you see here is a choice. And note that he did not choose a stallion. He didn't choose a war horse to enter into Jerusalem. He chose the most humble work animal you can get, a donkey. And he chose to do that because he wanted to make a statement as he's entering the town. I've always been about peace, and as I enter into this final chapter of my life, I'm coming in peace because all I want is peace. This is the ultimate called from shalom, working toward shalom with shalom the whole way. So he's evidencing this. A few days pass, and then we catch up again. He's still at Bethany. While at Bethany, it's a little town not too far from Jerusalem, like 5-7 miles. Jesus was a guest of Simon the leper. While he was eating dinner, a woman came up carrying a bottle of very expensive perfume. Opening the bottle, she poured it on his head. Some of the guests became furious among themselves. That's criminal, a sheer waste. This perfume could have been sold for well over a year's wages and handed out to the poor. Yeah, that's exactly right. This was like the dowry of this woman. And literally, this one bottle of perfume, in Napa County, dollars, we're talking like $100,000. And she just opens this thing up and starts dumping it on Jesus. So they swelled up in anger, nearly busting with indignation over her. But Jesus said, "Let her alone. Why are you giving her a hard time? She has just done something wonderfully significant for me. You will have the poor with you every day for the rest of your lives. Whenever you feel like it, you can do something for them. Not so with me. She did what she could when she could. She pre-anointed my body for burial." And you can be sure that wherever in the world this message is preached, what she just did is going to be talked about admiringly. All right, so for the get to know you around the table moment, like you two, say hello, make sure everybody knows each other's names, and I want you to share a story of just a highlight day in your life. Just what were one of those moments in your life where you think of that memory, and every time you do, joy comes over you, okay? So for some of you, that could have to do with your kids, it could have to do with a promotion. You know your story, I don't. So share it around the table, one of your highlight stories. Go for it. We'll give you a few minutes.
All right. Good morning, everyone. There's never enough time to get it all out of your system in these little chats, so we'll just go ahead and interrupt it. Think of your fellow man, lend him a helping hand, put a little love in your heart. If you see it getting late, oh, please don't hesitate. Put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place, and the world will be a better place for you and me. Just wait and see. Another day goes by, and still the children cry. Put a little love in your heart, If you want the world to know, we won't let hatred grow. Put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place. And the world will be a better place for you and me. You just wait and see. Take a good look around, and if you're looking down, put a little love in your heart. I hope when you decide, kindness will be your guide. Put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place. And the world will be a better place for you and me. Just wait and see. Put a little love in your heart. 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 Take a good look around, and if you're looking down, put a little love in your heart. And I hope when you decide, kindness will be your guide. Put a little love in your heart, and this world will be a better place. And the world will be a better place for you and me. Let's just wait and see. Put a little love in your heart. Yeah, put a little love in your heart. Come on. Put a little love in your heart. Put a little love in your heart. Yeah, put a little love in your heart. 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 All right, you guys sound good. That was helpful. Love it.
All right, so I'm going to invite Ann Wagoner to come up and do a little bit of reading so you don't have to hear my voice drone on and on today. So if you want to sit there, that would be great. Go, you just do you, Ann.
Yeah.
Whatever. So we continue the same story.
Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the cabal of high priests, determined to betray Jesus. They couldn't believe their ears and promised to pay him well. He started looking for just the right moment to hand him over. On the first of the days of unleavened bread, the day they prepare the Passover sacrifice, his disciples asked him, "Where do you want us to go and make preparations so you can eat the Passover meal?" Jesus directed two of his disciples, "Go into the city. A man carrying a water jug will meet you. Follow him. Ask the owner of whichever house he enters, 'The teacher wants to know, where is my guest room, where I can eat the Passover meal with my disciples?' He will show you a spacious second-story room, swept and ready. Prepare for us there." The disciples left, came to the city, found everything just as he had told them, and prepared the Passover meal. After sunset, Jesus came with the 12. As they were at the supper table eating, Jesus said, "I have something hard but important to say to you. One of you is going to hand me over to the conspirators, one who at this very moment is eating with me." Stunned, they started asking one another, "It isn't me, is it?" He said, "It's one of the 12, one who eats with me out of the same bowl." In one sense, it turns out that the Son of Man is entering into a way of treachery well marked by the scriptures. No surprises here. In another sense, the man who turns him in turns traitor to the Son of Man. Better never to have been born than to do this. In the course of their meal, having taken and blessed the bread, he broke it and gave it to them. Then he said, "Take, this is my body." Taking the chalice, he gave it to them, thanking God, and they all drank from it. He said, "This is my blood, God's new covenant, poured out for many people. I will not be drinking wine again until the new day when I drink it in the kingdom of God." They sang a hymn and then went directly to Mount Olives. Jesus told them, "You're all going to feel like the world is falling apart, and that is my fault. There's a scripture that says, 'I will strike the shepherd, the sheep will go helter-skelter.' But after I am raised up, I will go ahead of you, leading the way to Galilee." Peter blurted out, "Even if everyone else is ashamed of you when things fall to pieces, I won't be." Jesus said, "Don't be so sure. Today, this very night, in fact, before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." He blustered in protest, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never deny you." All the others said the same thing.
Thank you, Anne. So we want to take a break and just think about this moment. This was the Last Supper. They're going to be heading to the Garden of the Gethsemane next. But you just witnessed this incredibly heavy conversation. It had such a range of emotions. They're coming together. This is perhaps the Passover meal. So there's good food. There's a sense of celebration in the air. Everybody else except for Jesus is in a really good mood. And then you got Jesus who's saying, "Guys, we got to talk because there's something going down and you need to know about it." And just think about the heaviness that was in that space, this weird contrast of joy and celebration. And now it's like, really serious conversation time. And so my question for you is, have you ever experienced anything like that? And the reason I ask you these questions today is, one is to help you experientially get into that room with Jesus and the disciples. When have you ever had a moment like that? Maybe it was a holiday dinner or something, and then somebody broke some hard news, or you had to have a difficult conversation with somebody in a festive kind of a space. Or maybe for you, it was something else. I don't know what it was, but just take a second right now. How can you relate to that story of Jesus and this meal where a very important, serious conversation had to be made? And what kind of feelings did you have when you did that? Just sit with it. This week when I asked Brian what he wanted to sing, I didn't tell him anything about what I was doing today. And this happens a lot where Brian will just shoot me his list. And this is another one of those weeks where it's just a perfect fit. Starting off with the happy-go-lucky song, "Put a Little Love in Your Heart," people know it, they like it. And this one that he's going to sing is called Lesson 1. And it kind of reminds me of this setting with the disciples, where they think they got it figured out. They think they know what's going on. And there's going to be some struggles along the way, and they're going to find out they've got the cart before the horse in a little bit, and they're rushing. They don't even know what they're getting into yet. And this song reminds me of that. Take it away, Brian.
Lesson 1. Gotta find it. Lesson 1. Do not hide. Lesson 2. There are right ways to fight. And if you have questions, we can talk through the night. So you know who you are and know what you want. I've been where you're going and it's not that far. It's too far to walk, but you don't have to run. You'll get there in time. Lesson 3, you're not alone. Not since I saw you start breathing on your own. You can leave, you can run. This will still be your home. So you know who you are and know what you want. I've been where you're going and it's not that far. It's too far to walk, but you don't have to run. Get there in time. get there in time. In time to wonder where the days have gone. In time to be old enough to wish that you were young. When good things are unraveling, bad things come undone. You'll either love and lose your innocence. And there will be liars and thieves that take from you. Not to undermine the consequence, but you are not what you do. And when you need it most, I have 100 reasons why I love you. So you know who you are and know what you want. I've been where you're going and it's not that far. It's too far to walk, but you don't have to run. You'll get there in time, get there in time. So you know who you are and know what you want. I've been where you're going and it's not that far. It's too far to walk, but you don't have to run. You'll get there in time, get there in time. If you weather love and lose your innocence, just remember lesson 1. Thank you.
Jenny, come lead us in a meditation.
Hi, everyone. When Pastor Pete asked me to come up with a meditation centered in love, I remembered a story. I'm headed to Peru in a couple weeks for one of my friends' weddings, and it just, I'm thinking about Peru a lot these days. So your request reminded me of the first time I went to Peru, which was about 12 years ago. I was newly sober and connected with some people in the community who are very spiritual. I was trying to find my way back to God at the time. And my friend, who's a chiropractor, invited me to come with her and another group of chiropractors, a small group, to do some service in the mountains in the Sacred Valley of Peru. And I jumped at the chance and said yes. And one day we had traveled for hours, up a mountain into the remote area in the Sacred Valley, and we were serving at a school. And my friends were in this, set up in the front of the room with their chiropractic tables, and I was kind of helping the kids in line wait for their turn. And I was standing behind this little girl, and she reached up and took my hand and put it over her shoulder and placed it on her heart. And in that moment, I felt my heartbeat connect to her heartbeat. And then, like a swoosh of wind, internal, I suddenly and instantly felt connected to the heartbeat of everyone in that room, everyone on that mountaintop, everyone in Peru, and everyone in the world. And it was one of the most humbling, powerful experiences where I felt so connected to God that I've ever had. And whenever I'm feeling lost or uncertain in this world, or just questioning my existence, that's one of the memories I often turn back to, and I weave it into my meditations on a regular basis. So I found this meditation to lead you through. It's one of Sharon Salzberg's meditations. She's one of my favorite meditation teachers, and it's on loving kindness. So I invite you to find your comfortable seat, close your eyes if you want to, or just kind of soften your gaze. And take 3 deep cleansing breaths. Just place yourself in this moment. Put everything else aside. Imagine you're encircled by people who love you. Imagine yourself in the center of this circle. Again, it's made up of the most loving beings you've ever met. Could be family members, friends, people you've never met but have inspired you. Maybe they exist now, or they've existed historically, or even mythically. Receive the love of those who love you. Experience yourself as the recipient of the energy, attention, care, and regard of all these beings in your circle of love. Silently repeat whatever phrases are expressive of that which you most wish for yourself, not just for today, but in an enduring way. Phrases that are big and open, like, may I be safe, happy, and healthy. May I live with ease of heart. Notice how you feel when you receive love. As you experience yourself in the center of this circle, all kinds of different emotions may arise. You may feel gratitude and awe. You might feel kind of shy, like you would rather duck down and have all of these beings send loving kindness to one another and forget about you. Whatever emotion may arise, just let it wash through you. Your touchstone is the phrase you chose. May I be safe, happy, and healthy. May I live with ease of heart, or whatever phrase you've come up with. Keep opening yourself to receiving love. Imagine that your skin is porous and this warm, loving energy is coming in. Imagine your heartbeat connecting with those who love you. Imagine yourself simply receiving. There's nothing special that you need to do to deserve this kind of acknowledgement or care. You deserve it simply because you exist. Now send loving care to the people in your circle. You can allow that quality of loving kindness and compassion and care you feel coming towards you to flow right back out to the circle, and then towards all beings everywhere, so that what you receive, you transform into giving. You give the quality of care and kindness that does actually exist in this world, that can become part of you and part of what you express or return. Take a deep, cleansing breath, and when you feel ready, you can open your eyes or lift your gaze.
Do scripture first. Gordon, come on up. As he's coming up, the flow is intentional today. So Jenny just had us talk about dialing into this time where we felt deeply loved, maybe your closest friends, family, kind of a thing. And I think Jesus, for that Passover meal, that was his topping off. He was with his closest friends, and he needed every bit of that love that he felt because of how the story was going to turn now.
They came to an area called Gethsemane. Jesus told his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John with him. He plunged into a sinkhole of dreadful agony. He told them, "I feel bad enough right now to die. Stay here and keep vigil with me." Going a little ahead, he fell to the ground and prayed for a way out. "Papa, Father, you can, can't you? Get me out of this. Take this cup away from me. But please, not what I want. What do you want?" He came back and found them sound asleep. He said to Peter, "Simon, you went to sleep on me. Can't you stick it out with me a single hour? Stay alert, be in prayer, so you don't enter the danger zone without even knowing it. Don't be naive. Part of you is eager, ready for anything in God, but another part is as lazy as an old dog sleeping by the fire." He then went back and prayed the same prayer. Returning again, he found them sound asleep. They simply couldn't keep their eyes open, and they didn't have a plausible excuse. He came back a third time and said, "Are you going to sleep all night? No. You've slept long enough. Time's up. The Son of Man is about to be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up. Let's get going. My betrayer has arrived." No sooner were the words out of his mouth when Judas, the one out of the 12, showed up, and with him a gang of ruffians sent by the high priests, religion scholars, and leaders, brandishing swords and clubs. The betrayer had worked out a signal with them. The one I kiss, that's the one. Seize him. Make sure he doesn't get away. He went straight to Jesus and said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. The others then grabbed him and roughed him up. One of the men standing there unsheathed his sword, swung, and came down on the chief priest's servant, lopping off the man's ear. Jesus said to them, "What is this, coming after me with swords and clubs as if I were a dangerous criminal? Day after day I've been sitting in the temple teaching, and you never so much as lifted a hand against me. What you in fact have done is confirm the prophetic writings." All the disciples cut and ran. A young man was following along. All he had on was a bedsheet. Some of the men grabbed him, but he got away, running off naked, leaving them to hold the sheet. They led Jesus to the chief priest, where the high priests, religious leaders, and scholars had gathered together. Peter followed at a safe distance until they got to the chief priest's courtyard, where he mingled with the servants and warmed himself at the fire. The high priests, conspiring with the Jewish council, looked high and low for evidence against Jesus by which they could sentence him to death. They found nothing. Plenty of people were willing to bring in false charges, but nothing added up, and they ended up canceling each other out. Then a few of them stood up and lied. "We heard him say, 'I'm going to tear down this temple, built by hard labor, and in 3 days build another without lifting a hand.'" But even they couldn't agree exactly. In the middle of this, the chief priest stood up and asked Jesus, "What do you have to say to the accusation?" Jesus was silent. He said nothing. The chief priest tried again, this time asking, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed?" Jesus said, "Yes, I am, and you'll see it yourself. The Son of Man seated at the right hand of the Mighty One, arriving on the clouds of heaven." The chief priest lost his temper, ripping his clothes. He yelled, "Do you hear that? After that, do we need witnesses? You heard the blasphemy. Are you going to stand for it?" They condemned him, one and all. The sentence, death. Some of them started spitting at him. They blindfolded his eyes, then hit him, saying, "Who hit you? Prophesy." The guards, punching and slapping, took him away. While all this was going on, Peter was down in the courtyard. One of the chief priest's servant girls came in, and seeing Peter warming himself there, looked hard at him and said, "You were with the Nazarene, Jesus." He denied it. "I don't know what you're talking about." He went out on the porch. A rooster crowed. The girl spotted him and began telling the people standing around, "He's one of them." He denied it again. After a little while, the bystanders brought it up again. "You've got to be one of them. You've got Galilean written all over you." Now, Peter got really nervous and swore, "I never laid eyes on the man you're talking about." Just then, the rooster crowed a second time. Peter remembered how Jesus had said, "Before a rooster crows twice, you'll deny me 3 times." He collapsed in tears.
Thanks, Gordon. So this passage is a difficult one, and I'm wondering, how do you relate to this one? Have you ever experienced a time in your life when you've felt like Jesus, just denied, rejected, brought up on false charges in some way? My hunch is there's some time in your life where you feel like you've been maligned and just hung out to dry. But if we're honest about our life, maybe that's not the only way you can relate to the story. Has there been a time in your life when, for whatever range of circumstances, you weren't the one who was betrayed, you were the betrayer? You weren't the one receiving the injustice, you were the one handing it out. Getting on board with whatever maligning of somebody's character or silence when somebody needed you to speak up. How do you relate to this part of the story? You know, one of the ways you know when you are resonating with the story as you actually feel with the characters in the story. And I'm named Peter, so it's kind of easy for me to identify with Peter. But there have certainly been times in my life where I wish I'd done things differently. And I can literally relate to the collapsing in tears. And not to put a bow on all this, because it's good and right for us to feel our feels. It's good to go there. We're not going to stay there, but it's good to be honest about how you're feeling. And the good news is when we are even at this time of great sorrow like Peter was experiencing, the love of God is still with us. It's still there. So, next song.
When the rain is blowing in your face and the whole world is on your case, I could offer you a warm embrace to make you feel my love. When the evening shadows and the stars appear and there's no one there to dry your tears, I could hold you for 1,000,000 years to make you feel my love. I know you haven't made your mind up yet, but I would never let you wrong. I've known it from the moment that we met, no doubt in my mind where you belong. I'd go hungry, I'd go black and blue, I'd go crawling down the avenue. No, there's nothing that I wouldn't do to make you feel my love. The storms are raging on the roaring sea and on the highway of regret. The winds of change are blowing wild and free. You ain't seen nothing like me yet. I can make you happy, make your dreams come true. No, there's nothing that I wouldn't do. Go to the ends of the earth for you to make you feel my love, to make you feel my love.
We find ourselves on Maundy Thursday night, is what you just heard, into early Friday morning. This is what's called Good Friday. At dawn's first light, the high priests, with the religious leaders and scholars, arranged a conference with the entire Jewish council. After tying Jesus securely, they took him out and presented him to Pilate. Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered, "If you say so." The high priest let loose a barrage of accusations. Pilate asks again, "Aren't you going to answer anything? That's quite a list of accusations." Still, Jesus said nothing. Pilate was impressed, really impressed. It was a custom at the feast to release a prisoner, anyone the people asked for. There was one prisoner called Barabbas, locked up with the insurrectionists who had committed murder during the uprising against Rome. As the crowd came up and began to present its petition for him to release a prisoner, Pilate anticipated them. "Do you want me to release the king of the Jews to you?" Pilate knew by this time that it was through sheer spite that the high priest had turned Jesus over to him. But the high priest by then had worked up the crowd to ask for the release of Barabbas. Pilate came back. So what do I do with this man you call King of the Jews? They yelled, nail him to a cross. Pilate objected, but for what crime? But they yelled all the louder, nail him to a cross. Pilate gave the crowd what it wanted, set Barabbas free and turned Jesus over for whipping and crucifixion. The soldiers took Jesus into the palace called Praetorium and called together the entire brigade. They dressed him up in purple and put a crown plaited from a thorn bush on his head. Then they began their mockery. Bravo, King of the Jews! They banged on his head with a club, spit on him, and knelt down in mock worship. After they had had their fun, they took off the purple cape and put his own clothes back on him. Then they marched out to nail him to a cross. There was a man walking by, coming from work, Simon from Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. They made him carry Jesus' cross. The soldiers brought Jesus to Golgotha, meaning Skull Hill. They offered him a mild painkiller, wine mixed with myrrh, but he wouldn't take it. And they nailed him to the cross. They divided up his clothes and threw dice to see who would get them. They nailed him up at 9 o'clock in the morning. The charge against him, the King of the Jews, was printed on a poster. Along with him, they crucified two criminals, one to his right, the other to his left. People passing along the road jeered, shaking their heads in mock lament. You bragged you could tear down the temple and then rebuild it in 3 days. So show us your stuff. Save yourself. If you're really God's son, come down from that cross. The high priests, along with the religion scholars, were right there mixing it up with the rest of them, having a great time poking fun at him. He saved others, but he can't save himself. Messiah is he, King of Israel? Then let him climb down from that cross. We'll all become believers then. Even the men crucified alongside him joined in the mockery. At noon, the sky became extremely dark. The darkness lasted about 3 hours. At 3 o'clock, Jesus groaned out of the depths, crying loudly, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you abandoned me? And some of the bystanders who heard him said, listen, he's calling for Elijah. Someone ran off, soaked a sponge in sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink, saying, let's see if Elijah comes to take him down. But Jesus, with a loud cry, gave his last breath. At that moment, the temple curtain ripped right down the middle. When the Roman captain standing guard in front of him saw that he had quit breathing, he said, this has to be the Son of God. There were women watching from a distance, among them Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of the younger James and Joseph, and Salome. When Jesus was in Galilee, these women followed and served him and had come up with him to Jerusalem. Late in the afternoon, since it was the day of preparation, that is Sabbath Eve, Joseph of Arimathea, a highly respected member of the Jewish council, came. He was one who lived expectantly, on the lookout for the kingdom of God. Working up his courage, he went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Pilate questioned whether he could be dead that soon and called for the captain to verify that he was really dead. Assured by the captain, he gave Joseph the corpse. Having already purchased a linen shroud, Joseph took him down, wrapped him in the shroud, placed him in a tomb that had been cut into the rock, and rolled a large stone across the opening. Mary Magdalene and Mary, mother of Jesus, watched the burial. So the questions for this have to do with feeling utterly mistreated and wondering, when have you felt completely alone? When have you been the recipient of injustice? Have you ever been the one who mistreated another? Similar to the last questions we looked at. How do you relate to Jesus' story here? Last week, I talked about two ways of thinking about the cross. One was about substitutionary atonement, penal substitutionary atonement, which I gave you a different perspective on, which was a second way of looking at Jesus' death on a cross, which we just saw and heard unfold, where you got a guy who's unjustly tried and arrested and beaten and crucified, executed. Why? Because of pride, false accusations, all of this. Pure spite, as Pilate himself, Mark tells us, knew what was going on. It was just a completely unjust thing, and Jesus was silent to shine a spotlight on the injustice all the way through. But there's another way to think about the cross that has been my hope for all of this experience this morning, and that is that we look at what Jesus went through and recognize that this Jesus human being, the Son of Man as he liked to be called, was fully aware of everything that we go through in life. And so, if you have a highly divinized Christology where you really hearken to an idea of the demigod model of Jesus was this half God, half man somehow, then when you think about it that way, that gives you hope, because you recognize that this Son of God really experienced the fullness of human life. And therefore, when you call out to God, God understands what you've gone through because Jesus has gone through such things. But there's another rendering as well, and it has to do with our theological position here. We use the $20 word panentheism regularly here. It literally means everything in God. We don't believe that there's a separation where God is up there in heaven somewhere, but that God actually permeates all of creation. That God is with us even now. He's within us, you and me, even now, within every living thing. It doesn't mean that everything is God, but that everything experiences God, and vice versa. God experiences everything in real time. Meaning that you have every reason to resonate with Jesus' story because you are a human being. God didn't need Jesus to do all of that to understand the human experience, because God was already living the human experience with every human being. Every joy that you've had, God experiences your joy. Every frustration you've experienced, God experiences and feels with you your frustration. Every sorrow, every bit of despair, God is not distant, but is actually truly with us, experiencing it all, being affected by it all. This is a kind of a departure from some classic, very old theological thinking that we don't really resonate so much today, but it's in there. Thomas Aquinas was famous for saying that God is distant, God is holy and unchanging, and is not affected in any way by anything that happens on the earth. He would go on to say, even if you feel like your prayers of lament are getting God to feel bad for you, don't be fooled. God is perfect and holy and is untouched by anything that we go through, even if you think the other. But what we're seeing here, and what we certainly saw in the life of Jesus and how he related to God and how God related in and with him, is that if God is really in real time with us all the time, then God is no stranger to our pain. God's no stranger to everything you've been through. And to me, that's something. And that's not a little something, that's a big something. Because it means that no matter what I'm going through in life, the God who gives me life and breath, the God who gives you life and breath, understands what I'm going through. I am not alone. You are not alone. Even when you feel like it, like Jesus dying on the cross, you're not alone. You're not alone. And some of you really, really need to know that today, because you're going through hell. And your pain is so deep that you're crying out with Jesus on the cross, "Where are you? I feel so alone." And there's no easy answer. There's no silver lining that makes it all better. But there is power in knowing that we have another with us. As Paul would say to the Corinthian church, the Spirit of God groans with sighs too deep for words. helping us express that which we can't express on our own. So then maybe the question is, if God is truly with us all the time, how do we wake up to God? How do we wake up to the moments where God is all around? And from this, I share a reflection from Barbara Brown Taylor, who is featured in one of Richard Rohr's daily emails this week. First, there's this scripture from Genesis. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. That was a story of Jacob's ladder, his vision of this ladder extending to heaven. Barbara Brown Taylor considers how God shows up in all things. The Bible I set out to learn and love rewarded me with another way of approaching God, a way that trusts the union of spirit and flesh as much as it trusts the world to be a place of encounter with God. People encounter God under shady oak trees, on riverbanks, at the tops of mountains, and in long stretches of barren wilderness. God shows up in whirlwinds, starry skies, burning bushes, and perfect strangers. When people want to know more about God, the Son of God tells them to pay attention to the lilies of the field and the birds of the air, to women kneading bread and workers lining up for their pay. And the editor says, Taylor admits how easy it is to miss these ever-available encounters with God. So Brown continues. According to the Talmud, every blade of grass has its own angel bending over it, whispering, grow, grow. How does one learn to see and hear such angels? If there is a switch to flip, I have never found it. As with Jacob, most of my visions of the divine have happened while I was busy doing something else. I did nothing to make them happen. I play no apparent part in their genesis. My only part is to decide how I will respond, since there is plenty I can do to make them go away. Namely, I can figure that I've had too much caffeine again, which made me think about this thing altogether. I can remind myself that visions are not true in the same way that taxes and the evening news are true. Or 3, I can return my attention to everything I need to get done today. These are only a few of the things I can do to talk myself out of living in the house of God. Or I can set a little altar in the world or in my heart. I can stop what I am doing long enough to see where I am, who I am there with, and how awesome the place is. I can flag one more gate to heaven, one more patch of ordinary earth with ladder marks on it, where the divine traffic is heavy when I notice it, and even when I do not. I can see it for once instead of walking right past it, maybe even setting a stone or saying a blessing before I move on to wherever I am due next. Human beings may separate things into as many piles as we wish, separating spirit from flesh, sacred from secular, church from world. But we should not be surprised when God does not recognize the distinctions we make between the two. Earth is so thick with divine possibility that it is a wonder we can walk anywhere without cracking our shins on altars.
"24 oceans, 24 skies, 24 failures, 24 tries, 24 finds me in 24th place, with 24 dropouts at the end of the day. Life is not what I thought it was 24 hours ago. Still I'm singing, Spirit, take me up in arms with you. And I'm not who I thought I was 24 hours ago. Still I'm singing, Spirit, take me up in arms with you. There's 24 reasons to admit that I'm wrong. With all of my excuses, still 24 strong. See, I'm not copping out, not copping out, not copping out. When you're raising the dead in me, oh, I am the second man, oh, I am the second man now. Oh, I am the second man now. And you're raising these 24 voices with 24 hearts, with all of my symphonies in 24 parts. But I want to be one today, centered and true. I'm singing, Spirit, take me up in arms with you. You're raising the dead in me, oh, I am the second man, oh, I am the second man now. Oh, I am the second man now, and you're raising the dead in me. Oh, 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 oh. I want to see miracles, to see the world change. Wrestled the angel for more than a name, for more than a feeling, for more than a cause. I'm singing, Spirit, take me up in arms with you. And you're raising the dead in me, oh, I am the second man, oh, I am the second man now. Oh, I am the second man now. And you're raising these 24 voices with 24 hearts, with all of my symphonies in 24 parts. Life is not what I thought it was 24 hours ago. Still I'm singing, Spirit, take me up in arms. Yeah, I'm not copping out, not copping out, not copping out. Yeah, I'm not copping out, not copping out, not copping out.
So that brings us to the end. And I hope that just sitting with the story, that maybe we don't take the time to see in its whole, has impacted you, has reminded you of what the one who we claim to follow went through. And I hope that somewhere along the way you've experienced the presence of God sweeping in this place. Maybe it was at the very beginning when you shared your celebrations with each other and you recognized that you weren't the only one celebrating. Or maybe it was when you remembered a time in your life, like at that Last Supper, where you pretty much had it figured out, but then Jesus or somebody in your life says, we need to talk. Or maybe it was when you experienced a time of rejection or denial. Or maybe it was a time when you felt utterly alone. And maybe today you've recognized that God experiences it all and is with us every step of the way. Thursday night, we'll go one step deeper together with communion, some light music. It's just a simple service, and I hope you can make it to that. And now, the benediction. God be with you till we meet again. God be in you, go in peace. May his counsel guide, uphold you. May his sheep securely fold you. God be with you till we meet again. again. God be in you. Go in peace. Amen. Thanks for coming.